Life is a ride. Life is a ride. Life is a ride. Life is a ride along. Welcome to the experience. Welcome to the journey. Welcome to the journey. A movement. This is Ridealong Live, where everyone has a story to tell.
You're constantly thinking of food, but sometimes you just don't want to cook or want something a little different. That's when you call Tasties, preparing meals that you really love. Tasties, our mouth-watering food, would have you coming back every day. But hold on, we only prepare meals Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for now. Call early because we have a lot to serve and we would love to serve you. Tasties, we prepare the meals you love to eat. From macaroni pie to baked chicken, provision dumpling and saltfish, stewed chicken, curry chicken, baked chicken, rice and peas, salads, and more. Please call for daily menu. Call 425-0624 or 403-0411. You can pick up your meals from us or we deliver to you. Tasties, food that's delicious.
Yes, folks, welcome everyone around the world watching. This is a special edition of Ridealong Live for today, Sunday, a day that we're not normally on air, but it's very important. It is essentially important that we came to you today. There is so much topics, there's so much things that we need to speak about, and we have a full house, a full panel that's going to be joining us today to talk about the COVID-19 control bill. We have, from a legal perspective, we have youth leaders, we have political leaders, we have advocates, a ton of folks that going to share a light and help us, everyone, understand the coronavirus or Grenada COVID-19 control bill. So as you're coming, I want everybody to go ahead and share the live right now, put it on the page, start a watch party, and let's start the discussion. Now, this is going to be a different kind of ride as well, because we're also going to be interacting with the folks over there on Zoom. So we do have a number of folks on the Zoom that's going to be contributing as well. And that's not the only way that you could get in touch with us. You could also contact us via phone lines. We're going to open up the phone lines as well sometime in the program. So you could call in live. The number that you could call in once the phone line is open is 718-701-5720. That's 718-701-5720. At present, we are broadcasting on all media platforms. On Twitch, we are also broadcasting on Periscope, on YouTube, and here on Facebook as well. So in multiple platforms, give everyone an opportunity to share and understand and get a better appreciation for what's happening. Well, just get a better understanding as to what's happening with the COVID-19 control bill. So as I said, we have a list of panelists today that we're going to be talking to, and we're not going to waste any time on it. First up, we have Mr. Earl Maitland. Mr. Earl Maitland is a political leader of GEM, and he's going to be joining us and sharing his point of view as well. Also on the panel, we have Mr. Joel Greenwich. He's a youth leader there in Grenada. He's also been very prominent and popular on social media, advocating some of his topics and providing a lot of information to his followers. Then we have Michelle Sabrina Alexander. She's an advocate and an aspiring social scientist. And you all know Sabrina. She's been a part of the Ridealong family for a long time. Also, from a legal perspective, we're going to get some information from the one and only, the man himself, Mr. Ruggles Ferguson, no stranger to Ridealong, and he is going to be giving us a legal perspective on the control bill. Right over there, not leaving out anyone at all, we have Mr. Augustine Lewis. Mr. Augustine Lewis is a youth advocate as well, and he will be ventilating all his ideas with us here. A big panel. We also have Ms. Cassandra Mitchell. She's an advocate, plain and simple advocate, and she also very popular on social media, and she's going to be sharing her views on the topic as well. Last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Cameron Nimrod. He is going to be joining us as well. to share his perspective, his views. He's also a youth leader, and that's the panelists that we have here. But you also could be a part and participate, guys. So we want you guys to join on the Zoom. The Zoom is open right now. We're going to be putting the link there. So if you want to ask a question, you could also join on the Zoom. And guys, my name is Junior George, as always, and this is a special edition of Ridealong Live. Guys, recently, as of a few days ago, we heard and we've seen the conversation on social media as it relates to the COVID-19 control bill. I'll read an excerpt here from Now Grenada. It says government has proposed a 12-month sunset legislation as part of its effort to contain the contain and control the spread of COVID-19. The legislation, among other things, provide for maximum penalty of $25,000 in a magistrate court for any person who found guilty of violating the section of the legislation. It also speaks to a number of other things, added a responsibility to the Minister of Health, plus tons of other information. So let's start it off right now. From a legal perspective, from a legal mind, Mr. Ruggles Ferguson, sir, could you bring this up to perspective for us? Could you bring this up to context, I should say, for us, and tell us what is the COVID-19 control bill as you understand it from a legal mind?
Okay, thank you, Junior, and let me just greet all panelists. It's a pleasure to be on with you and to all the listeners out there. The COVID bill, I would refer to it as in short as the COVID bill, as I understand it, is an attempt to regulate and control the spread of COVID-19. And it's referred to as a bill because it's not yet an act. It will be an act if passed by Parliament, both houses of Parliament, and eventually assented to by the Governor General. Just to put things in context a bit, one, Junior, when the issue of COVID arose and we went into late March, a state of emergency, the Governor General had then declared a state of emergency for 21 days pursuant to Section 17 of the Constitution. And just let me indicate that the Constitution provides certain fundamental rights and freedoms. And what a state of emergency, in a state of emergency pursuant to Section 17, the Governor General can declare a state of emergency and you can have suspension of rights in those circumstances. The state of emergency is usually for a very limited period. So Section 17 says, if Parliament is sitting, then the declaration of the state of emergency expires within 7 days. If Parliament is not sitting, as obtained in March 2020, then the state of emergency runs for 21 days and then expires. However, it can be extended by resolution of both houses of Parliament, by majority of each house of Parliament, and it can be extended for a period of 6 months. And the extension can continue. And during that period of emergency, what the state has been operating under principally has been the Emergency Powers Act, passed sometime in 1986 or 1987, where Cabinet then will make regulation for the control of COVID. So that has been the scenario. The first 21 days expired sometime in April. And then Parliament passed a resolution to extend it for 6 months. So from April possibly to September or October, it will expire. What has happened recently now is, and it came about with either announcement or a release based on statements made by the Prime Minister in a radio program, that the state of emergency will be made permanent. That, of course, was a very unfortunate remark because emergency and permanent does not really go hand in hand. Emergency refers to a particular set of circumstances that warrant particular attention because it is different to the norm. So there was reference to a permanent state of emergency. And then following, in the days following, there was the circulation of a bill intended to be passed by Parliament on Wednesday. And actually, when you read the bill, if it's the same draft bill I'm seeing, the draft bill speaks to what in effect is sunset legislation that will expire in a year's time. So if passed, and it's intended to control COVID-19. Of course, there's no problem with that in terms of the general intent of the bill because the state has an obligation to ensure that citizens are protected in circumstances of a public emergency or public health crisis. Now, the issue then becomes the contents of the bill. And when you the contents of the bill itself and whether or not the bill goes too far in terms of interfering with fundamental rights and freedoms.
Well, I guess that's the big question here.
Right.
If it's constitutional for such a bill or such an act to be signed, such a bill to be proposed and such an act to be signed, I guess that's what everyone is very, very up in arms about. If it's constitutionally correct to have or sign such a bill, is it constitutional?
Right. Now, okay, so let me just give the backdrop of that. The Constitution is the supreme law. What the Constitution does, it creates fundamental rights and freedoms, and it sets up the various structures of the state, the institutions of the state, parliament, cabinet. Basically, you would hear mention of the separation of powers. And that speaks to three arms of the state. The state rests on three pillars: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The legislature is reflected in parliament, and that's the lawmaking arm of the state. And the Constitution authorizes parliament to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of the country. So that's the role of parliament. The role of the executive or cabinet, in which ministers sit, is really policy making. Whether to build a road, whether to build a hospital, what you focus on over a 5-year period, as the case may be. That's the role of the executive. Then you have the judiciary. And the role of the judiciary is to basically interpret the law, rule on resolve legal disputes, and make orders, as the case may be. The judiciary is also in the guardian of the Constitution and the guardian of constitutional rights.
Right.
Now,
right.
in our Constitution, the first 13 sections deal with fundamental rights and freedoms. And what I would say just briefly in relation to fundamental rights and freedoms, that no right is absolute. There are restrictions on rights and freedoms. So the state may pass laws that restrict fundamental rights and freedoms. However, in doing so, there is a principle called the principle of proportionality. The laws or the restrictions must be in keeping with the requirements of the Constitution. What are the requirements of the Constitution? You say, listen, in most cases, you can pass laws in the interest of public safety, public health, public morality, defense, etc. There are about 5 planks.
Right.
And what this bill says, listen, we are passing this bill in relation to public order, public safety, public health. So theoretically, the bill can be passed. However, I come back to the fundamental question. whether or not now the bill goes too far in terms of the objectives to which the bill seeks
Okay.
to uphold.
Okay.
Does it go too far? Does it go far enough? And that's where the center of debate is. I think we can start off on the general proposition that COVID-19 is a pandemic and the state has an obligation to protect citizens. In
Right.
protecting citizens, they can pass laws, they can make regulations.
Right.
However, that has to be done against the constitutional background of
Yeah.
fundamental rights and freedoms. And
I got
therefore,
you.
you have to achieve a balance.
Junior, if I may just intervene here,
Yes.
before you go on, Mr. Ferguson, you're making reference to Section 17(5) of the Constitution, which speaks to a resolution of a House of Parliament passed for the purposes of this section, and that this section means a declaration of a state of emergency shall remain in force for 6 months or such shorter period as may be specified therein. I realize that you're paraphrasing the Constitution, and I understand why, but you're leaving out very key words. I'm continuing with Section 17(5). Provided that any such resolution may be extended from time to time by a further such resolution, each extension not exceeding 6 months, not exceeding 6 months from the date of the resolution affecting the extension. And any such resolution may be revoked at any time by a resolution of that House, meaning the House of Parliament. So you're missing out keywords in referencing the Constitution. So one of the questions, when I saw the initial bill, one of the questions I asked, is it constitutional to issue a state of emergency for 12 months when the Constitution says not exceeding 6 months from the date of the resolution? And based on the draft bill, it says coming into effect from August 15, 2020, and ineffective 1 year later. So based on your legal expertise and your understanding of the Constitution, am I wrong in assuming that it's unconstitutional to have a state of emergency for 12 months when the Constitution says it should not exceed 6 months?
Okay, great observation. And that's an important question. And I thought I made it clear. Sorry if I didn't make it clear. I said the Governor General, first, when the state of emergency is declared, that goes for 21 days. And then it can be passed, Parliament may by resolution extend it for a first 6 months, and then may further extend it to by 6 month periods. So that is correct. That's a correct observation. Now, in terms of the act itself, and there's a particular reason that I started off the way I started off, because what we have had over the past few months, certainly since March, we have had a declaration of a state of emergency, and we have had regulations, COVID-19 regulations made by cabinet pursuant to the authority under the Emergency Powers Act. So a combination of Section 17 of the Constitution and the Emergency Powers Act. Now, that's a very important question that you ask, and an important observation made. I'm happy that you made it at the beginning of the program. And just let me express what my view is. Unlike what we have had before, which are regulations, this is not a regulation. It's a bill that is proposed to go to Parliament to pass as an act of Parliament. So so it's different now from what has obtained before. And in that scenario, in my view, and I'm just expressing my view, that this bill, or if it becomes an act, it will be an act of Parliament and therefore it would not run side by side with emergency powers. So in other words, saying state of emergency on the one hand and this bill on the other hand, it does not go hand in hand. So what you would have now is an act of parliament that is supposed to stand for 1 year. However, the bill itself makes certain provisions, and I'm not too sure why it was found necessary to do that. I think section 25 of the bill, either 24 or 25, which says that the Governor General can declare a state of emergency in the interest of public order, public safety, public health. And I can only speculate here, and I'm speculating, that the Emergency Powers Act of 1987, it was felt that that act possibly did not go far enough to cover public health situations, but it was more an Emergency Powers Act to deal with issues like insurrection and so.
Right.
So to answer your question, in moving forward, again, just my view, there are three possible courses of action that could have been taken. The first was, as Cassandra alluded to, you could extend the state of emergency for a further 6 months by a further resolution of Parliament. That's one option. In that option, because you act in pursuant to Section 17, the state of emergency continues and Parliament makes a further COVID regulation to deal with the situation as exists. That's one option. A second option I've heard bandied about is that they, listen, we don't need to go state of emergency route because we have a Public Health Act, we have a Quarantine Act, and what we can do is to amend those acts. So they don't require a state of emergency. A second option would be to amend existing acts.
Right.
That's another option. And a third option, which is seems to be the option chosen, is to pass an act of Parliament now. This is no longer a regulation made pursuant to the authority of Cabinet, but to pass a standalone act called the Coronavirus Disease Control Act. So, in effect, Cassandra, that act now would be standalone, and it doesn't need a state of emergency to survive.
Right. Yeah. Let me just turn to Joel. Joel, I saw you very passionate on the topic earlier today. In looking through the bill, what are some of the things that you objected to, while and you think that is not something that would be good or for the betterment of the Grenadian population? Joel, unmute, Joel.
Yeah, pleasant good afternoon to the panelists and pleasant good afternoon to the viewing public. Yeah, one of the things that really caught my attention was the maximum fine of $25,000, right? That was one of the first things that caught my attention. Also, the powers for the police to actually come into your property without a warrant, right? That also caught my attention. Also, the powers given to the Minister of Health and in consultation with the Chief Medical Officer to determine the restrictions on business. To me personally, I felt that power being just reserved to those two persons, considering the environment, the political environment in this country. I think a lot of businesses could find themselves being victimized in that situation. So those are three of the things that really stood out most to me and sort of led me to having a great concern as to the true intention of this bill. I also want to make this point. In the midst of this COVID-19 crisis, some of the regulations was not that stringent to the extent. I am saying that we have overcome this crisis, the meat of the crisis, and we have 0 cases, right? I am expecting at this time the regulation to see an easing of the regulations. I was not expecting that we will be moving out to the parliament to now put to pass a bill, right, that will further enforce regulations and give power to the police officers and custom officers and all these people. You know, I have deep concerns about the true intention of this bill at this current time, because I think that now we should be seeing some easing of some of the regulations, not the enforcement of a bill at this time, or the enactment of this bill at this time.
Okay. Earl, I want your point on this topic right here. What are some of the things that you object to on this bill?
Everyone, the persons on the panel, thank you for having me here, Junior. And good afternoon to Mr. Ferguson. And before I give an opinion on such, I want to encourage Mr. Ferguson. He was doing a Monday program, Law Made Simple, with George Grant. And I want to encourage him to continue that program so we, as citizens of Grenada, Carriacou, and Pittsburgh, would have a better understanding as it relates to the laws of Grenada. Right? And I want to thank him for what he has done in the past with taking that time off to educate us on the laws. As it relates to the bill, I have many concerns. The fact that we are here today debating whether this act is constitutional or unconstitutional, it speaks volumes. We have seen today, earlier there was a program where one young lawyer, Richie Maitland, was on a program. Then we have Mr. Ruggles Ferguson here speaking on the matter. We have witnessed that the Bar Association or possibly a group of lawyers who are uncomfortable with the bill being debated on in Parliament, they have invited apparently persons to come down on Wednesday to the Parliament building at Mount Welldale to share their concerns. You know, I believe that speaks to the capabilities of the Attorney General, a gentleman we have in the Attorney General's office there. Personally speaking, I must admit that once one understands the Constitution of Grenada being the supreme law of the land, and once we familiarize ourselves with the literature in it, we would know that all the rights, as Mr. Ferguson has said, are not indefinite. They can be touched. There are certain situations where these rights will be exempted. For instance, we do have a freedom of movement within the state of Grenada. But based on certain things such as public health, safety, and morality, that right to move freely through Grenada can be limited. For instance, a person could be incarcerated at a prison or Her Majesty's prison or a cell or whatever the case is. Now, the bill is in the introduction is speaking about protecting us from a virus that is here. But I personally believe that once our rights are going to be limited, it should be reasonably done, right? And I do not believe personally that at this time there is enough reasonable cause to go through such great lengths. For instance, Junior, I have a particular concern with the Minister of Health having so much authority over business transactions in Grenada. For instance, I would see it as a conflict of interest, especially knowing that the minister is a businessman himself. What would happen if one of the competitors, the minister's new business, one of the restaurants is competing with the minister? Would he actually use that authority that is going to be granted unto him to shut down the business. This is something that Joel just said. I also have an issue with the mask. Now, the bill, as it is, gives situations where mask will not be worn, and that is only specifically for two situations where one would be identifying themselves, oneself, sorry, to a police officer or to someone who the owner of a premises, right? So, for instance, if we were to go into the bank and the security guard asks us to identify ourselves, then we would have to take down the mask. Now, it does not leave any breathing space for persons who may be having medical complications or whatever the case is. And based on how the law is, this is a very dangerous thing and it should be addressed. Also, I have had an issue with seeing that the persons in authority have taken it upon themselves to say that one condition that is necessary for persons to enter the state of Grenada is that persons will have to pay for their quarantine, right? And it does not specify whether it is foreigners or returning Grenadian citizens who we know already have been stranded for the last 4 months and do not have the finances, even in some situations, they do not have the finances to pay for flights to return home. Now, this bill, once it's passed after the 15th of August, that means that Canadian citizens in England, in China, in the USA, if they do not have the monies or their families do not have the monies to pay for
Right.
quarantine, then they
Yes.
would actually not be able to return home. This is a very dangerous thing. Upon that, there's many more things, but I know
Yeah.
everybody like
Yeah, we wanna spread it out a bit, right? In light of all that has been said, and I know we have Augustine there, but I want to come to you quickly, Cassandra. Do you think that the bill went a tad bit too far? And what is the most concerning part of that bill that you disagree with?
For me, I am concerned about the constitutional infringement that I'm seeing that the bill is alluding to. The powers that the bill is handing over to the Minister of Health, I guess with support from the Chief Medical Officer, as well as the power of the police. And I know during the course of the morning, I've heard and I've gotten a lot of feedback from individuals who were quoting the 1947 and the 1987 Act, the Quarantine Act for me. But even with those acts, I keep saying there's no act, and I'm sure Mr. Ferguson can back me up. There's no act or no law that supersedes the Constitution. And when you're talking about a state of emergency technically means that as citizens of Grenada, we are handing over some of our fundamental rights to the powers that be. And just reading through the draft bill, I am very, very concerned about the powers of the police, the powers of the minister, and some of the constitutional infringement that I'm seeing. Because I'm going through the bill and it's keep referencing section 62(1) of the Constitution, which speaks to the exercise of the Governor General's functions. But one of the things I don't think that they're paying attention to in that particular section of the Constitution, it says that the Governor General, um, in cases where he or she is required by this constitution, because they're saying that he or she can act in advice of the cabinet, but only where the constitution says so. And in a state of emergency, the constitution gives the governor general certain powers. I don't know if our governor general is
Yeah.
aware of that. Earlier on, I heard Mr. Ferguson referencing the governor general declared a state of emergency. I did not see the governor general at the initial announcement of a state of emergency. Because if you look at section 17(1) of the Constitution, it says the Governor General may, by proclamation, which shall be published in the Gazette, declare that a state of emergency exists for the purposes of this chapter, meaning chapter 17 of the Constitution. The state of emergency wasn't declared or proclaimed by the Governor General. That announcement was made by the Prime Minister of Grenada. And then I saw a couple of days afterwards that the Governor General signed and gazetted the state of emergency, but that is not what the Constitution says. She was supposed to be the one proclaiming and declaring, according to the Constitution, a state of emergency. And the Constitution clearly defines what a state of emergency is and how a state of emergency should be handled. And while I understand, I know people keep saying that these are not normal times, whoever wrote the Constitution when we accepted it in 1974 actually gave procedures and outlined how this is supposed to be done. Even in a case where we do not have a sitting parliament, where parliament is dissolved, the governor general now has full control to recall the last ministers, the last senators, and say, look, we have a state of emergency, and this is how we are going to move forward. But we haven't heard from the governor general. So I am truly concerned about the infringement on our constitutional rights and fundamental rights and freedom, the powers that's been handed over to the Minister of Health and to the police. And we have to be very mindful of that. I've been saying it from day one, that we are handing over some of our rights to the powers that be. So we need to know what those rights are, what those fundamental freedoms and responsibilities that we're giving over to those in authority.
Yeah, sure. Michelle, you are very much close to the information that's being dispersed. You are an advocate. You'll be paying attention to what's happening here as it relates to this COVID-19 control bill. What are some of the things, or what are the top agenda item on that bill that you're not very comfortable with?
Okay, without even going to the bill, right? Looking at the timing of the bill, I think it's off. I said that to say this is a time when most Grenadians we're not in our correct state of mind because things are not the usual. So psychologically, mentally, and as I said on my post earlier, spiritually, some of us are affected. My biggest concern with this bill, whilst I understand the need for protocol, the need for safety, the need for public health, I can't seem to understand the rush of the bill, like the lack of consultation. The government just went ahead and they made a decision that they're going to enact a bill, then they're going to take it to parliament. Nobody was consulted. Now, I heard the Prime Minister in one of his statements said that the state of emergency, well, the act, what it is, will be enacted until they find like a vaccine for COVID-19. We weren't even briefed on the pros or the cons of the vaccine. So how we suppose, and matter of fact, how can we tell that vaccine will be available in the next year? And are we going to be forced to take a vaccine? Also looking at the charge, $25,000. We need to be serious. The average Grenadian don't even work for $25,000 a year.
Yeah,
so
but let me ask you a question, Michelle. That's probably exactly the point. right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Canada right now as we speak, and as I came into Canada, coming across the border,
Mm-hmm.
I was threatened. Well, not threatened, but I was told by border control here in Canada that if I were to break the quarantine act, I could be charged as much as $1 million.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that.
So
But Junior, the thing about it is, right? The thing about it is this, right? A few weeks ago, the same Prime Minister, he was beating his chest in success that, Grenadians has, we have done well in terms of curbing the virus, in terms of curbing the spread. What it means that what they had in place before was working. So why is the rush? Why is the need to enact this bill? What is there for them that we are not seeing? Because it's not justified. If you cannot bring it to us and break it down in a level that everybody would understand, then it makes no sense. To me, that's how I see it.
I got you. No problem. Let's come over to Augustine Lewis. Augustine, tell us a point or points of this bill that you are uncomfortable with.
Well, firstly to say, I agree with most of the panelists thus far. I mean, I believe common sense is very important, and just taking everything and just applying some context. Why now?
Exactly.
We're told that we're COVID free, and here is the government asking for our rights. Why should we give up our rights? And I believe that, the poor people and the young people would be, I would say, the section of our population who this bill is going to affect the most. Look what happened in Guave a few weeks ago. So this bill is actually, say validating Guave that it is okay, to come into my premises without a warrant and shoot me. Why are we giving the police, this power? And we have seen the abuse of power during the quarantine and during the lockdown. We have seen the ways that the police has conducted themselves, and we're giving them more power. And when we deal with a corrupt administration as what we're dealing with, are we going to give these people more power? Are we going to give the Minister of Health more power? And the point that and Joel made, he's a businessman. What if he decides that he's going to shut down his rival business? So there's a clear conflict of interest. We're not in any bubble, we're in Grenada. And we know that the administration that we have is a corrupt administration who abuse the little power that they have. And here, this administration want more power. Joe Carlo making in simple terms.
All right, let's go to Kimran. Kimran, I want to get your point of view because it's important that we understand the context and understand everyone's look and interpretation of the bill. What's your interpretation, and what part of the bill you do not agree with? Unmute yourself, Kimran.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to say thanks for having me and exposing me to this platform to share my views on the topic. When I saw the bill, the first thing that came, well, a couple of things that stand out was exactly the exorbitant price in terms of the penalties in anybody that is infringing on the regulations. Like Michelle earlier on said, there is few Grenadians that actually work annually that would make that kind of money. And I understand that you want to protect the people from themselves. So you want the charge to be a deterrent. But in the same manner, it needs to be something that is also affordable as well. And another thing that really stood out to me was the part that gave the police so much power where they could enter someone's premises without a warrant. And I'm from Guave, and I was one of the young men that was on the scene after that young man got shot and was actually the one that administered some force aid to him while the policemen were just standing there and it was none of their concern. And giving that amount of power to them, it just doesn't make any sense. It just says that, they have the right to just walk into your place and if anything's happened and just shoot you, because we saw what happened in Guave last month. And next thing too, is the same thing that a couple of the panelists would have already mentioned in terms of so much power is given to the Minister of Health in consultation with the chief medical officer. Now, when you give one person all that power, to me, it's just news for disaster, because he's a businessman as well. And like the other panelists said, if there is some other business that is very competitive with him, I'm seeing conflict of interest that he might pull things in his way, to kind of victimize that business place and whatnot. So, and also, a next thing is that the timing of the bill, because I remember clearly that the Minister of Health and the others, they were beating their chest and saying, we as Grenadians, we have done pretty well in COVID and, the whole spread of the coronavirus and stuff. So if we are COVID-free, I'm thinking that policies and regulations should be slackening, not tightening. But it seems that they are tightening it, and I just don't understand that. If we are COVID-free, why are we tightening our regulations when they should be slackening a bit? So these are the concerns I have concern with the bill.
All right, point taken. When should I
one more thing. As it relates to giving the police all this power, we need to understand that the Royal Grenadian Police Force is not an independent body. No, whatever the RGPF, they represent, and I say that with no fear and no apology, they represent the interests of the power that be. So how can you, if you give them power, it's only obvious whatever is in place, they will be doing it on a reflection of you. So it's just that the people in power, they create rules and they create laws in support of the superstructure. They don't care about the majority that is poor and the majority that is vulnerable. So there is an ulterior motive behind this bill. And I personally believe that whosoever is taking directive for this bill is getting it from some outside agency, maybe the WHO, because they maybe present some money or some type of funding. So we can't sit down and accept that this is total. This cannot be accepted.
Yeah, I hear that. Joel, earlier today, and before we go to Joel, let me just say this, guys. You're watching Ridealong Live Special programming. We're talking about the coronavirus COVID-19 control bill. And we see the folks in Zoom, and we're going to come to you guys shortly. And I want you guys to also write down the number. So when you open up the phone lines, you could call, because we want you guys to participate in this conversation as well, okay? And the number that you're going to call as soon as we open up the phone lines is, that's it right here, 718-701-5720. The line's not open yet. Just hold it for when we open up the phone lines. We're going to take your calls. And the guys in Zoom, we see you, and we're going to come to you shortly, all right? Thanks for joining us in Zoom as well. Joel, earlier you did a live, right, where you made mention, you made a couple mention of dictatorship in learning to the bill and how the structure, the power structure is in Grenada. Tell us about, do you think that this bill is going as far as to aid to what you deem as a dictatorship administration in Grenada? And tell us your reason for making those mentions.
Well, currently, I've been a youth leader for the last few years, and I have worked along with a lot of young people. And one of the greatest fear of youth is voicing their opinion that goes contrary to the powers that be, that goes contrary to the government. A lot of young people behind the iron curtain will have conversations, but will be afraid to come publicly to express their concerns because of the fear that they have seen friends and family members victimized by this administration. This current bill, in my opinion, further lends to solidifying the power that this current government has. I mean, you already control the lower house, and in the upper house, you have greater control because most of the bills, they go straight through. There's no opposition, in my opinion, right? And we understand the culture that we have created with politics, right? That once you don't support a political party, then the party can use the police force. Like, for example, let's say I did a live today, and the leadership of the country did not like the live that I did. They can actually send the police to arrest me. All I know, I'm in my house and police knock my door and they come to arrest me. On what grounds? Maybe they have reasonable cause to believe I have COVID, or I would have infringed on a regulation that I may not even know anything about. You understand? So that level of power further lends the dictatorship and creating a sort of autocratic sort of society. And I have a serious issue considering the political environment in Grenada. It's already riddled with corruption and victimization. And people are already in fear. The fear has been imposed by our current leaders. You understand? So this bill further solidify. And let me make the point about it. I have seen during this COVID period how the police force would have operated. Matter of fact, I did a live during the lockdown in which I would have spoke about some of the issues. And many people were able to come forward and also express their concerns and their own personal experiences as to how they were treated by the police, right? So further giving that power to the police force, right? And knowing that the alignment with the police force and the government further lends a kind of dictatorship in our country, using the police force to abuse people, further abuse people. You understand? Right. And I have a concern about that.
Guys, point taken. Earl, I see you sitting there patiently, and I can see you kind of sweating a bit. You have a lot to add to the topic. Do you think that the law goes as far as to create a further dictatorship government, or give the government immense power or added power to make it easy for them to make unilateral decisions?
Well, I believe that in certain times, difficult decisions have to be made. I do not believe that this is such a time, right? I believe that, as Michelle rightfully said, there has to be some ulterior motive that we are not aware of. The thing is, Junior, there are so many things that do not make any sense in that bill. For instance, there is the fact that police officers and medical officers can just issue oral demands of persons. And not only would that have to happen, we as the civilians would have to comply for a guaranteed 5 hours. And if we are not assessed by the persons who have determined we may or may not be COVID positive, we would also have to wait for an additional 9 hours, right? This is 14 hours to get assessed. This is against the constitutional right of freedom of movement. As I said earlier, there are exemptions to that freedom of movement. But what is really going to determine whether a person is reasonably believed to be of COVID? Is it going to be a cough? Is it going to be somebody that's walking down the road sweating in the night? What is the case? Are our police officers actually medically inclined to realize or to understand what COVID is? This is too much power given on to the police. And as the two gentlemen mentioned, just approximately 2 weeks ago, we witnessed what has happened when police officers feel empowered enough to enter persons' homes without a warrant. We know that there is existing legislation which would allow police officers to enter the homes of persons without warrants and arrest persons without warrants. This is taking it a bit too far because I'm sure Mr. Ferguson can can add to this discussion, but I believe that the officers of the Royal Grenada Police Force can enter your home without a warrant once crime is being committed, right? So they do not need a warrant at that time. But to go as far as to saying that officers of the Royal Grenada Police Force who are poorly trained for 6 months and sometimes 3 months, they do not already understand the current laws that we have in Grenada. So how is COVID, how is medical terms and medical conditions going to be applied? How many of them have been trained? As the bill says, any officer of the Royal Grenada Police Force. So it does not specify an officer or a group of officers who are going to be trained and to see these things that we are looking for. This is really unacceptable. And what we are seeing here today in Grenada is evidence of breach of trust by those persons in authority. But we continue speaking about the conflicts of interest. And this is something that continues happening. Now, according to Mr. Ferguson, is it the law that guides those individuals in the Integrity Commission? The conflict of interest it must only be perceived to be a conflict of interest. And I personally, as a taxpaying, law-abiding citizen of Grenada, do not have any faith in the Governor General. Cassandra has spoken very well and eloquently on the fact that this may be an unconstitutional bill. If passed as an act, it would be unconstitutional. The Governor General, as she is now in her capacity, has refused to even honor Section 72 of the Constitution, which speaks to clemency. I have gone down to that residence myself and seeing that she was so openly comfortable enough to refuse to do a job that she's being paid to do. I can only imagine what would happen if this bill allows her, in her reasonable whatever it is, to pass a state of emergency, and this government, the cabinet, would have authority over communication, over food, over transportation, over all the assets we have in Grenada, the water company, the electric company, and all these companies. It's really terrible. And I would really like to see not only the lawyers out here, but I would like to see the magistrates and judges as well, especially as we would be using or appealing to their perspective on things, because this is exactly what it is. Now, somebody in the comments, and just wrapping up, somebody in the comments was asking, how do we stop this? Now, we have seen an abrupt end to many injustices and illegalities in Grenada when the people of Grenada come together and unite as one Grenada. So as long as we continue today, tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday morning, I am confident that the reality check would be placed where it is supposed to be.
Right. Guys, again, you're watching a live broadcast here, discussion on the COVID-19 coronavirus control bill. At this point, we're going to give you guys an opportunity to chime in on the phone line. So we open up the phone lines right now. The number that you could call in right now is 718-701-5720. That's 718-701-5720. We have Mr. Earl Maitland. Of course, we have also Joel Greenwich, Michelle Alexander, Sabrina Alexander. We have Augustine Lewis, Ruggles Ferguson, Cassandra Mitchell, and Kimran Nimrod. You could pose your question to anyone on the panel. While we wait on the calls to come in, and also we're going to go to the Skype call, Zoom later. Ruggles, based on what you've been hearing here from all the panelists, right?
Yeah.
Is it a matter of the articles in this bill? Okay, we're getting a call coming in. Let me take that. Let me take the call. Let me take this call if I could get. All right. All right. Let me take this call. All right, caller, you live? Okay, the caller hang up. All right. The question is the articles written in stone, or it has to go through a process where it would be debatable, and then some of the things could omitted or changed? What's the process from here?
Okay, Junior, for a bill to become a law, so the bill is drafted by the legal department. There's a legal department in the Attorney General's Chambers, Ministry of Legal Affairs. That bill is introduced to Parliament. It goes first in the lower house. That's the House of Representatives. And if passed in the lower house, then it goes to the upper house, the upper house being the House of Senate. And if passed in the House of Senate, and passed here, meaning passed by majority vote, then it goes to the Governor General to be assented to, and then it is published in the Gazette, and a date set by the Governor General for the law to come into force. That's basically how laws are made. It starts as a bill, it emerges once passed as an act of parliament, gazetted, and a date placed for that law to come into effect. If you may permit me,
Okay.
there are a number of important points and concerns raised, and just listening to all of it again reinforces my view of the critical importance of one, public legal education, and two, the critical importance of consultation and debate. Because I think that we are here today, not necessarily because of what the bill contains, but precisely because there was no engagement, there was no debate, there was no consultation. And in an important bill like that, then, for people to hear about it, reinforces really and truly conspiracy theories. No, I just want to just touch on one or two quick points. Cassandra, the role of the Governor General. We have to understand that in our system of government, we do not have an executive president. We do not have an executive head of state. The Governor General is head of state, but the Governor General is largely ceremonial. So the Governor General acts on the advice of cabinet or on the advice of a minister designated by the Constitution. And there are a few instances where the Governor General acts in his or her own deliberate judgment. So, for example, the definition or the declaration of a state of emergency is not a matter within the deliberate judgment of the Governor General. That is for the executive or for cabinet to determine and advise the Governor General accordingly. So it is important that we understand, unlike Guyana, for example, that has an executive president, the United States, we, under the Westminster model, have largely a ceremonial governor general. So that's the first point I want to make. The second issue, touching on the fine, the maximum fine, the fine of $25,000. The point I want to make in relation to the fine is this: the fine is not an automatic application of $25,000. That's the maximum fine. As is laid out in the bill, there is what you call the introduction of the fixed penalty, much like traffic offenses and ticketing. So there's a fixed penalty which says the fixed penalty for the first offense, $500. The fixed penalty for the second offense, $750. And the fixed penalty for the third offense is $1,000. Like with traffic offenses, if you are issued a ticket by a police officer and you believe that ticket was unjustifiably given, then you can go to the court to protest it or defend it. And after the court it will be treated as a charge, in other words. So it first starts off as a ticket. If the ticket is not paid, then you go before the court. It's like a charge. You go and plead if it's driving, for example, parking in a no parking place or so. Then you go and you plead guilty or not guilty, and there's a trial. At the end of the trial, if you are found guilty, then a particular fine can be imposed. In this case, the first step would be the fixed penalty ticket. And it starts off at $500. First, second, third, $500, $750, $1,000. And then now, if you go to court and you contest it and you are found guilty, then you can be fined accordingly. How the principles of sentencing is that you cannot impose a fine, for example, on an individual who does not necessarily have the money to pay. You have to first carry out a means test to determine whether or not that is an appropriate sentence. So, for example, if a man is unemployed, you can't fine him $20,000 because he wouldn't have the money to pay it. That, in effect, would be a prison sentence. So that's the maximum fine. And just, for example, the fine, if I may use the example of drugs. For drugs, possession of drugs, the maximum fine in the magistrate's court is $250,000 for drugs. The maximum fine, that's possession of drugs. The maximum fine for trafficking is $750,000 or 3 times the value of the drugs. That's in the magistrate court. But you will hardly find a magistrate imposing a fine on somebody, it depends on the quantity of drugs, several different variables. What the law allows is a maximum fine. You cannot fine beyond that, but you can fine below that. So that's just the point I want to make in relation to the fines. The second issue, which really lay at the heart of the concerns, and legitimate concerns too, and that deals with the power of the various officials under the Act. So, for example, you have the power of the Minister of Health, 2, the power of the police, the power of immigration officers, the power of health officials, and the acts like these that come into effect, as I said, you can interfere with constitutional rights. The issue is how far you go. So, for example, what are the constitutional rights that touch and concern this bill? First, the right to liberty, right? The right to personal liberty. I'm just dealing with fundamental rights under the Constitution that the bill touches and concerns. Right to personal liberty in the sense that a police officer, any police officer, not above any particular rank, but any police officer can arrest you without warrant. So that deals with personal liberty. Secondly, another fundamental right touched would be the right to the right to protection from arbitrary search and entry. And what the law gives is the power of entry without search. So that's a fundamental right touch. The third fundamental right would be the right to freedom of assembly and association, because it empowers the minister in this case to say, listen, gatherings over a certain number, then certain limitations can be imposed. And the fourth fundamental right touch would be the right to freedom of movement. Freedom of movement means the freedom to circulate freely within Grenada, or freedom to leave Grenada, or freedom to enter Grenada. So I'm just saying broadly, these are the fundamental rights and freedoms that are addressed. Now the issue is, right, the issue, sorry.
No, go ahead, go ahead. After you make a point, I just want to make a quick announcement.
So I'm saying now, the balance in all of this, and I'm just attempting to provide a guide as far as addressing the issue. The guide to all of this is where does the public health issue end and where the fundamental rights issue begin. And that's really the issue. Now, I just want to make a comment and throw it out. For example, the issue of COVID and internal issues with COVID, I think Grenada has done well. There's the open acceptance that we do not have community spread. The reality, however, is that soon the borders would be open. And then what are the implications and how best we deal with these things? And these are the kinds of discussions that we need to be having. These are the kinds of consultations that we need to be having together with stakeholders. And so if that is thrown out and you have the public debate, which I always believe in, you have a variety of viewpoints that you can draw upon, and that, you know, people can be part and parcel in the common fight against the common enemy, which is COVID, instead of creating a fight among ourselves to deal with the common enemy.
Right.
So
Let me just while we on there, I just wanted to just read something that was published by GIS just about 3 minutes ago. And the headlines of this press release that just came through said that the COVID-19 Control Bill 2020 will not be tabled in Parliament on Wednesday. It went on to say that the government of Grenada wishes to inform the stakeholders and the general public that the bill entitled COVID-19 Control Bill 2020 would not be tabled in Parliament on Wednesday, July 29, 2020, as previously announced. That was just published 3 minutes ago on the GIS. Your reaction on that? Let's go to Joel. Your reaction on this breaking news here. Unmute, Joel.
It really shows the power of the people as the biggest opposition in the country, and it shows when we unite as a people and we are very firm in our position and we are willing to take firm actions on issues that we see affect us, that we could really make a difference. So it's a good news. I think it's a good opportunity for the government to go back to the table, engage the people, do all the public consultation, and let the people have a say in terms of how this bill is going to be drafted and how it's going to become enacted.
Yeah. I'm gonna go around and get everyone's view on it. Cassandra, I'm excited to hear your point of view. Here now posted breaking news that the COVID-19 bill will not be tabled on Wednesday. Your immediate reaction?
Well, before I even say that, I want to say, and I say this with no apology, Mr. Ferguson, it's interesting that you say that the role of the Governor General is just ceremonial. I am somebody who's always been advocating for constitutional reform, and if she's only there for a show or as an ornament, then maybe as young people, most of us on the panel here, we are youth. Maybe we should be advocating for her removal, because if she's just ceremonial, why are we paying her? And I want to disagree with you there based on the facts of the Constitution, the Supreme Law, Section 17(8) of the Constitution doesn't see the Governor General as ceremonial. It actually says the Governor General may summon the Houses of Parliament to meet for the purposes of subsection 2 of this section, notwithstanding that Parliament then stands dissolved, and the persons who are members of the Senate and the House of Representatives immediately before the dissolution shall be deemed for those purposes still to be members of those houses. And that's speaking to a state of emergency and declaring and proclaiming a state of emergency in a case where Parliament is dissolved. So our Constitution doesn't see her role as ceremonial. And if you're saying, as one of a very respected individual of our society, that she's just ceremonial, maybe one of the things we should be advocating for is her removal. Because she simply serves no purpose, then why are we as taxpayers paying her? And I say this with no apology. And maybe she is not even aware of her role and responsibility outlined in the Constitution. As relates to the news on GIS, I want to support Joel. It's good news. It shows the power that we have as a people. The Constitution started it off. It says, we, the people of Grenada, whereas we, the people. So we have power over the politicians, the policymakers. We have power over the public servants, public officials. We are their employers. And it shows the power that we have when united, we come together as a voice and say, we are not sitting down and accept this. It's going to infringe on our rights. And this is not going to end. We are going to be paying attention to every single thing being done by this administration, any administration to come that will affect us and the future of our children. And I say this with no apology. This is just the beginning of many things to come. We have to be aware of our rights as well as our responsibilities. And as young people, and I make this a clarion call, we cannot be working in solace. We have to come together as a united voice and focus on the issues, focus on the decisions that our policymakers are making that are going to affect our future. So this is good news, but we will be paying attention. So we are not going to be distracted by the fact that it's now going to be tabled on Wednesday. We want to see a new draft. This is an opportunity for the cabinet to go back to the drawing board, and we would like to see the draft before it is
Michelle,
presented to
I'm actually
Parliament.
hear your point of view as well. This is great news, as we said, just published 3 minutes ago on the GIS. The bill will not be tabled on Wednesday, as previously noted. Michelle, your immediate response?
I think they're getting the message that we Grenadians, especially Grenadian youth, we will no longer sit and accept things to be shoved down our throat. To me, what the administration was supposed to do first, they're doing it last. And had there not been an outcry, we may not have seen that. So I'm very, very happy that at least common sense is still prevailing and that they can put it off for a later date. As Cassandra said, what we need to see is the new draft that will be taken. Also, we need to have more consultation. There are a lot of legal minds in Grenada. Use Mr. Ferguson, use other persons that educate us before you go there and just make a rash decision. Also, I also want to make a call to our representative. We don't just want to see you during an election time. When it relates to these pertinent issues, we want you to educate us. We're not here just to vote. That is not our only right as Grenadian citizens. So we demand more from you. Your silence is deafening. And if that's the representation that we have, then we don't want it.
And Augustine, what's your immediate take on this? It seems like the government heard the voice of the people. The advocates spoke out strongly, and the bill would not be tabled. What's your take on it? Before Augustine,
Well, it shows who.
hold on. Before we go to you, we had someone that just called, and I want to take their call. They've been trying a couple times. Caller, you live? Where are you calling us from?
I'm from Lake Charles.
Go right ahead, caller.
Yes, I was important information from you about my situation. Diabetes. I'm a type 2 diabetes. My daddy had told me about you.
Okay, caller.
He,
Okay, caller. We're not hearing you too good. You break. You're coming in and out.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead again. Start
Yeah,
over again.
yeah, my daddy told. It's like every time I talk, I could hear my voice again.
Okay. Okay. Thank you,
So that's
caller.
kind of
Thank
like
you. I'm not really hearing him too clearly. I don't know if he was calling for something else. Sorry, Augustine. Sorry to cut you off, but that caller been calling a couple times, so I wanted to get him on. Augustine, go right ahead. What's your take on it?
Well, I would say it shows who have the power. The power is always with the people, and I believe through unity we can accomplish a lot. And it's just a strong message to this administration and every political organization in Grenada that the young people will not be silenced, and that we are an important part in terms of development and to the direction that our country goes. And I also want to send out a call to all of the young people in our country. It is time to come forward. It's time to organize and as a unit and as a body to take our country forward. Our country has been suffering at the hands of the older generation. They have run their leg, and it is time that we take over the race. And I say this with no apology. This is our time. This is our opportunity to
Yes.
thrust our country forward. And this gathering, I think it is very beautiful and it is very important towards our future. And I call on other young people to join in as well. And as Cassandra says, this is
Yes.
only
Yes.
the
Absolutely.
beginning.
Caller, we got a call on the line from 473. Caller, go right ahead. You're live.
Hi, good day. You hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Right. I just want to say a congratulations to the panel, right? And Junior, you also. Joel knows me very well. We had a discussion at the barber shop this last Wednesday. Cassandra, you know me very well. You advocate for me to get parking on the carnage. Oh, you know me very well also. We also deal with giving donations to the needy and so, right? And I'm just saying that I'm very proud of you guys, right? And sometimes we say that we have no opposition. But let me tell you something. The panel here and everyone that is listening, we are the opposition, right? We are the opposition. A bill was about to be passed, and we made noise, and right now it's on hold. We are the opposition, and I'm proud of everyone here. And I'm saying, you know what? For us to move forward, we are the young people have to get up, right, and make a difference. Now, let me just say something, Junior, before I leave, right? In the days of Gary was 49 years old, and Bishop was 33 years old, right? And Bishop thought that Gary was too old to lead this nation, right? Look at the age of our leader right now. And what are we young people doing? He is in his 70s. For Grenada to go forward, we need the youth to take part and to take a greater part of this country's business. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, caller. I think that was echoed, a sentiment that was echoed by Joel this morning on his live again. Cameron, I'll come to you. We just heard this breaking news from the GIS. What's your immediate response on that? Unmute your mic. Yes.
Yeah, well, my immediate response on that is just to show how much power that we as a people have when we come together as one and we unite and speak with one voice. Because I think that maybe the only reason why this bill was withheld right now is because of what is going on right now. And that is just to show you, like I said earlier on, the power that we as people have when we speak with one voice. But just to go back on the question that you had asked previously, if we think that this bill is leading into somewhat of a dictatorship state. And my whole take on that is that when you give one person or set of people all that power, then you have to ask that question. Because this bill was about to pass and no consultation with the people who eventually are going to be affected by it, meaning the public, or with any other consultation in terms of the powers may be. So when these things are going on, you definitely have to ask these questions. So once again, I would just like to echo what the other panelists would have said in terms of standing together and speaking with one voice, and always, not sitting there and just taking things on our truth. It's time that we as Grenadians stop this kind of sheep mentality. And when I say sheep mentality, I mean just take whatever it is that is thrown at us. Instead of we are standing up and speak about it, we find ourselves in little groups and everybody just shoo-shooing and nobody wants to take the full front because they're afraid of maybe this personal victimization that might be coming their way. And these are things we definitely need to speak about and stand up against. Otherwise, we would
All
not
right,
see
let's
Grenada
go.
becoming a better place.
Let's go to our Zoom. We have someone on the Zoom that has a question. Caller on the Zoom, go right ahead with your question. Unmute your mic.
Yes, unmute. You can hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. My whole thing is the harshness in which we speak. I can tell that the people on the panel are very passionate.
Right.
Kudos to that. Yes, sometimes we need that, but sometimes it comes across so aggressive that it takes away the important parts of what we need to discuss. Now, first and foremost, to Mr. Ruggles, in terms of the COVID-19 Act, and based on my understanding, the only how the police can come into your house without a warrant, it has to fall under that act. They cannot just step in and be like, okay, I heard there's a gun in the house. Is the gun firing COVID bullets? No. The only how for them to, I could be wrong, I'm subject to correction, for them to do that part of the of what they're allowed to do, it has to fall under that. One law doesn't overshadows one or push aside one because of whatever is triggered. That that whole legislation or bill or act, whatever it is, you said is an act after it's passed in the House. It's been there since what, 1947, as I saw on Facebook, but it was never triggered because we never had such type of pandemic before, or so serious, whereby people's lives have been dropping away like flies, right? Personally, I'm half in and half out. It's a bit harsh, but I can see why certain measures has to be taken place, right? We as Grenadians, I know how we are, right? We get a bit of freedom and then we start taking things for granted. I respect the fact that some people have their whole conspiracy theories in their head. I respect that. But you need to respect those who are actually scared of this thing and seeing something is taking away people's lives. If the government doesn't do anything, they get the blame.
Okay.
They make an effort, they get a blame. We need to address this in a manner which does not come across as, okay, I hate, I have a thing against NMP and I have a thing against NDC. Let's do this as a peace.
So it's all, you're saying it's all being politicized. It's all being politicized. Ruggles, you were mentioned by the caller.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Yes. In terms of the specific question the caller asked in relation to whether or not you can just enter the house to do anything. No, it has to fall within the confines of the act. So it's all under that particular act. It would be pursuant to COVID-related stuff. So it does not set it aside for all circumstances. But again, Junior, the point I really and the caller has an important point that we need to address our minds to also. One, it is important that the people be involved in the process, and there are certain benefits of the people being involved in the process because people come up with ideas, unique ideas that you can't sit in a room and create yourself. So consultation is important. The business community would be affected by the bill. It's important to get the views of the Bar Association. It's important to get the views of the youth and so, because ultimately, in order to fight COVID effectively, you need the cooperation of everybody. So it's important that it be approached in a very inclusive manner. And I certainly see wisdom, and the sensible route to follow is to defer the passage of the bill and make sure that there is maximum education on it and maximum debate, because the debate is healthy. One wants to hear different views, and that's why I like to be in fora like these, especially when Mr. Maitland is there, because he gives me all the time. But again, valuable views come out, and too many times we are intolerant of opposing views. But I want to, if you will permit me, Junior, and I don't want to forget this point, to go back to my good friend Cassandra, who loves Section 17 of the Constitution and the role of the Governor General. Again, Cassandra, what I have to say is probably a reality check. There are certain instances where the Governor General can act in his or her own deliberate judgment. But in Westminster systems of government, the role of the Governor General is largely ceremonial. The real executive authority of the state, even though the Constitution itself says that the executive authority lies in Her Majesty, the Queen, who is represented by the Governor General. But really and truly, the executive is the cabinet. And the Governor General takes instructions from the cabinet. Yes, there are instances where the Governor General may acquire independent executive authority. So, for example, in 1983, after the US invasion, and the Governor General assumed authority, in between that and elections, the Governor General assumed authority and ruled by proclamation. It's interesting that you pointed out in the particular example you use that the Governor General assumes control there when Parliament is dissolved. In other words, Parliament has been dissolved. That means when it's dissolved, it's no longer a Parliament. Anytime you hear dissolution of Parliament, that is elections. You're preparing for elections. And therefore, when Parliament is dissolved, the next stage is the holding of general elections. And what 17.8, the relevant section that you pointed out, is saying, listen, if Parliament is dissolved, then the Governor General has certain powers to act in those circumstances. But that does not take away the point that the Governor General, unlike Guyana, for example, Guyana has a president. The Guyanese president is an executive president, though Guyana also has a prime minister. But the executive president is the one that has control. There's a president in Trinidad and Tobago, President Paula Mayweather. She is a ceremonial president. The prime minister is the chief. Trinidad has a republican status, so the head of state is not really Her Majesty. They have a local president, but that local president is akin to a Governor General, and the role is largely ceremonial. Dominica also has a president, same thing. So I'm not saying that the Governor General has no power at all. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying the role is largely ceremonial, and it's of course a point of debate, a point of constitutional reform in the future as to what the role of the Governor General should be, or whether we should have a Governor General at all, whether Her Majesty should still be the supreme head of state, or whether we should have a local president. So I just want to clarify those points.
Okay, the next question, I think, going forward, and Earl, I want to come to you, and Natasha, I want to come to you as well. What should be the next step, and what should be some of the proposal that we as colleagues, we as advocates could put out there that the government should do in drafting the next COVID bill, if it is that they will go ahead with a new COVID-19 control bill? What are some of the elements that should be included in there? I don't know who wants to take that.
I could start off, right. Definitely, there needs to be certain laws, right, to guide us. Without laws, we would just be a lawless state with everybody running around the place. We saw what had happened on the beaches and so on in the earlier stages where the RGPF unfortunately had to arrest persons who did not follow the procedures to protect themselves, right? I believe that the consultations are crucial at this time, right? There can be Zoom meetings that are being set up with to facilitate the people of Grenada, Caribou, and Petit Martinique. I also believe that we should have a learned magistrate or a judge there to guide the committee, whoever is doing the COVID bill, because what we have seen here today is an attorney general, the advisor to the government, who has failed miserably failed, right? So we should possibly, I am in agreement with Cassandra. The GG should possibly be removed, and I would also say that we should get an attorney general that will really integrate the Constitution of Grenada with drafting a bill. The people of Grenada, what I must say, Junior, is that I am so happy to see 1.2K people viewing this much crucial topic. This is not something that we usually see where people are minding their business, as we say in Grenada. And had we not succeeded with getting the government to take this bill off of the table, I would have felt like we have succeeded. We have stood together as a country. The journey has just begun. What I would also say is that Dr. George Mitchell is the head of the COVID team, and he's always open for ideas. So the people of Grenada can definitely contact Dr. George Mitchell, and I believe Mr. Francis Martin I have, so it could be included, because at the end of the day, everything that we all have to say, it should be taken into consideration. And I fully understand the previous caller that was on Zoom. He seems a bit concerned. And yes, sometimes we may come across as though, we're bashing and so on, but I believe that's based on the frustration, right? The frustration that we have as a people, the lack of confidence and so on in those that are running the country. And the passion, many times the passion is misconstrued for something else. But I assure the caller and others who are of the same opinion that we all have the best interests of Grenada, Caribou, and Petit Martinique at heart. And we definitely would try to put things down in a more pleasurable way, a more welcoming way for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Cassandra, it seems like the advocates, we won. We was a big milestone in at least getting this whole bill revert. What would you like to see if there was to redraft this legislation? What are some of the things you would like to see included in there?
I wouldn't say we have won as yet. I will use the term we have won when I actually see a new draft of the bill, and when I see consultations taking place with civil society, NGOs, the business community, the Bar Association, as to the way forward in addressing the whole COVID-19 pandemic and keeping Grenada COVID free. So until then, I would not say that we have won. Like Earl said, I think over the years, what has happened is that as young people, we have become mistrustful of administrations, of governments. So we are very wary. That's why we may sometimes come across as aggressive. But we all have good intentions. And I know practically everybody on the panel, and I think that our intent is well. we want to see Grenada moving forward. We are young people. It is our future that that's been decided for us. So until I see a new draft, until I see consultations, with the relevant stakeholders, I will not say that we have won as yet. And like I said earlier, we will be paying particular attention to this bill, to any bill that's been presented as draft to go into Parliament. And we are going to be looking at how this affects us and our future and the future of our children. Mr. Ferguson, I have to say this as it relates to the Governor General. Maybe this is a wake-up call for her. She does have power according to the Supreme Law of Grenada. And I want to kind of disagree with you as it relates to the state of emergency. The Constitution only describes two scenarios in which a state of emergency can be called. One, in a sitting parliament where you have elected government officials, not when the parliament is adjourned, but when you have elected government officials, and when parliament is dissolved, preparing for another elections, and then the Governor General has authority to call back those senators and those ministers and say, look, we have a state of emergency. That's the only two scenarios that the Constitution outlines where a state of emergency can be addressed, and it gives you how it should be done. So maybe, as you said, it's a wake-up call for the Governor General. It is something for us as young people to pay attention to moving forward as to whether or not we want a ceremonial Governor General sitting there who apparently doesn't know her function.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Augustine, I think that, do you think that we achieve the goal that we set out to today? And for all the things I've been said, I know Joel was on this morning, very, very powerful. After he did the live, I probably got about 10, 15 viewers that sent me his live to take a look at. And he's very impactful. He's doing a lot in advocating. Would you say that we have achieved the goal that we set out to in informing and making sure that they listen and hear that we're not just going to speak, but we could impact riots. We could get people to go out on the street, not riots, sorry. We could get people to go out on the street. We could mobilize people. Do you think that we achieve what we were set out to based on what was said here today and in other programs?
Well, I think that it is a giant step towards we want to achieve as a collective group of young people. I think that it's a bold statement to the powers that be that we are woke, we're aware of what it is that is going on in our country, and we will not be sheeps, but we will chat the way. And as Cassandra says, this is only the beginning. We're not going to celebrate. But we know that there is much more work to be done. And once we start seeing more consultation and they engage in civil society, the religious community, the business community, and to ensure that our rights as a people will not be infringed upon. So this is only a step, and a step into the right direction. And I want to thank every young person here tonight. All did his part. Joel did his part. Cassandra, Sabrina, Kimran. It was a collaborative effort. And I believe that there is great potential in this collective group. And as the caller from earlier on, he encouraged us, to come forward, to put our hand up, for our country, and we can no longer sit down. And I say this, and this is a bolder statement, not only to the government, but to the political class of Grenada, that, we mean business, and we are quite capable to handle the affairs of our country. We're not here for votes, we're much more than that. We are an important cog in terms of nation building and development. And this is our time. And I'm not going to even be nice about it. It is our time.
Yeah, absolutely. Sabrina, you're smiling. I can see you're happy about what was done here today. Although, as we said, that it's not a victory. It's not a victory lap. We can start clapping and celebrating, having big barbecues and things yet. But it's a good first step. I see you smiling. Explain the smile. Yeah, unmute, unmute.
I'm always smiling, but I think whilst the move is good, I still believe we should let our presence be felt, because it's not just the issue of that bill. There are a lot of injustices that are taking place, and I think I don't want to sound aggressive, so let me take my time. I think the current administration needs to realize that, there's a lot of changes that needs to take place, and we want to see these changes taking place. So I don't think we should just rest and take their word for it, because it could just be a shadow to just, just to sidetrack the population. Whilst I applaud it, I just think we should not sit back with it. We should still make our
Absolutely,
presence be
absolutely.
felt.
We're gonna come back to you, Kimran, and then we'll go to the lawyer. We're gonna wrap it up, guys. You're watching a live panel discussion here with, I think it was very timely. It was necessary. It was needed at this time, and I think that I like the fact of the panel. I like the team. I like the mixture of people that we have on this panel. Very impactful, and I think that we should have more of this type of discussions, more of this type of discussion where we could ventilate a lot more. Cameron, before I come to you, I see a call coming in from London. I want to take it, and then we'll come back to you. Caller from London, go right ahead. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, listen to us on the phone lines. So don't listen to us on the broadcast. Listen to us on the phone lines. Go right ahead. You're live.
Yeah, actually, I'm not calling from London. I'm from Maryland.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, it showed up like an English number. But go right ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's rather pleasing to see. I remember Ruggles. I know Ruggles, and I think I know Joel. But anyway, it dawned on me I should have been in Grenada yesterday for a week, and it's mind-boggling as to with the new COVID policy. Why do people have to be quarantined, say, in True Blue Bay? And it's very well known that the owners of True Blue Bay are friends of the Prime Minister. Why does the chartered flight arrangements have to be done by people who are supporters of the Prime Minister? So these are little things that you have to look at.
Yeah, that seemed like a whole new another panel discussion that we have to have soon. A whole other.
Yeah, but don't overlook the possibility of shutting the country, certain aspects of it, while feeding the hands who support them. What will happen when the other small hotels run out of breath? Will foreign investors then move in and buy up the hotels? These are things they had to look at. When they said that they're not passing it on Wednesday, I said, well, when will they pass it on Thursday? So don't really celebrate as yet. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, got you. Thank you so much, caller. Cameron, I was about to go to you on your final take on it. Go right ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I won't count this as a grand victory, but I would say it is a stepping stone in the right direction in terms of what it is that we want to achieve. And just to go back a bit on what that caller would have said, that sometimes we come about harsh in terms of how we present ourselves and stuff. That harshness and passion that you're feeling or hearing from our voices, it is actually the frustration of the people that we would have speak to, because we are not just representing ourselves, but we are representing Grenada on a whole. And that passion, that fire you hear from our voice, it reflects the people that we are speaking for, right? And too much times in Grenada, when people speak out on what a particular government or party is doing, people always think that your motive is you don't like that government, or maybe you supporting the other government. But that's not the case here. The case here is when you see things that are infringing on people's personal rights and all this stuff, and you don't agree with it, regardless who is in power, whether it's the NDC or NP, you speak about it. So are you trying to tell me that because of my relationship with somebody, if I'm seeing them doing wrong, I should not tell them that they are doing wrong. So, for example, my brother is doing wrong. I should not say to my brother that you are doing wrong. That this mentality, we need to trash this mentality out among us as Grenadians and stop painting people as whether they are yellow or green. Wrong is wrong. And I would just like to say one last thing. To me, personally, if I'm seeing somebody doing wrong and I don't speak about it, I don't speak about it, and I know better, to me, then I'm worse than that person who is doing wrong. Remaining silent is definitely not what you should do when you know better. So to me, we need to change our whole mindset about this political thing. Like I said earlier on, this is not political driven or anything like that. We just want betterment for our country, betterment for our children and everyone else that lives in Grenada as Grenadians.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Ruggles, we're gonna wrap it up with you. Just kind of close it off for us. The legal ramification going forward from here.
Right.
Talk to us.
Yes, Junior. Well, first of all, I want to make the point. You see this discussion that is taking place now in relation to Grenada? It is a global discussion taking place in all parts of the world, because what the COVID pandemic has created is the clash of rights versus state obligations, the whole public health versus fundamental rights. Even on Monday, I'm supposed to participate in a wider discussion in the Commonwealth involving speakers from India, as far as India, on this very issue, the title of which is COVID-19 and the rule of law. And it is a discussion that will be taking place in the weeks and months ahead in the four corners of the globe. And it's really refreshing to see, again, young people, the youth, whether individually or by way of, groups and so, come forward and speak and address issues. That is really enlightening, because the youths are the future. And that is one of the concerns. People always say, ask the question, where are the youth? The youth being the future, they need to be involved now. But having said that, I will say, in response to somebody that made the point, don't leave out the elderly people. It's always the time of the youth. But, as I always say, we must always have it's a phrase I once coined, to marry the energy and the enthusiasm of the youth with the wisdom and the experience of the old. So it's not about it's not about the youth overthrowing the old. It's about the youth playing the rightful role, but really embracing and ensuring that everybody is involved in moving forward, because that's the only way we can effectively move forward. And there are so many issues that we need to discuss, and part of the problem is that these discussions take place only when there is a crisis. And that's part of the problem. And what I would urge, if it's any advice that I can give, is that you make it standard to engage in issues, whether it's a crisis or not, because that engagement, that discussion can very well prevent things from developing into crises. So I would urge colleagues to continue the good work, and to commend you, Junior, to for your own work at public education generally. I have been involved in several of your programs, and all of them have been of an educational nature, apart from its news value. But it's of an educational nature, and that's why probably you can get me so many times to come on board, because I am an ardent believer in public legal education. I believe that knowledge is power, and it is important that every citizen understands certain basics about the law and the Constitution. People must have a working knowledge of the Constitution and how the Constitution relates to many of our laws, because that would assist in terms of guiding the way forward. So thank you
Absolutely.
for having me as part of the panel. I can see I need to have a separate discussion with Cassandra. I promised you I wouldn't have the last say. I would let her have the last say. We would need to have a separate discussion.
Now, what we're gonna do?
Cassandra,
We're gonna
next
arrange
time.
a one-on-one. We're gonna arrange a one-on-one. You and Cassandra are gonna come back on the right sometime next week,
Indeed.
and we could go through all of this discussion again for public knowledge and education. We're gonna end with Mr. Earl Maitland. Earl, wrap it up for us.
Yes. Thank you. First of all, what Mr. Ferguson has said, that we must marry the youth and the elders. I do agree with that. I want to take him up on that. I normally do a program where I try to educate people about the laws of Grenada. I want to invite him to use that platform to continue what he has been doing with the late George Grant, Law Made Simple. So before I move on, I just want to get a definite answer from Mr. Ferguson. Sometimes pressure would make him comply. So, Junior,
Well,
we can put them up there.
no, I don't need pressure to comply. The first point I want to make, Mr. Maitland, I take umbrage to the fact that you refer to me as an elder. But in any event, I think I understand what you mean. And I always make myself available to, once it's public legal education. Sometimes I cannot do it all by myself. In fact, this is the second program for the day that I'm participating in a very impromptu way. I have several programs to deal with tomorrow too, and remember I have clients to serve, and I have court almost on a daily basis. So I recognize the importance of it, and so for the last 20 years, I have been involved in public legal education because I believe that lawyers need to come out and speak, not just in times when there's an issue about the bill, but you need to deal with ongoing public legal education so people can understand the laws, very importantly, understand the Constitution. And so Mr. Maitland, I have no problems in participating in the programs at all.
All right, lovely. And the last thing I want to say, I want to echo the sentiments of every person on the panel, and I really do appreciate everyone on the panel. The thing is, we really do need to speak out and do not wait for the time when the crisis is imminent. We have to remember that there are many other battles that we need to continue with. The journey has not ended. We do have a gentleman who was seeking asylum in Grenada. He has been at Her Majesty's prison for almost a year now. And if the government is able to get away with that, right, we can only imagine what they will do to us, right, as citizens.
That's why they were saying, we are the opposition. We are the opposition. The media person like Joel and everyone here, we are the opposition, and we have to assert that responsibility and know it's not a matter of political affiliation. I don't think any one of us here speak from a point of political affiliation, but the fact is, if something is wrong, it's wrong, and it needs to be addressed forcefully. And I think if we utilize forums like this, platforms like this, to speak out and let the government of the day know that we're not playing. I mean, we are really going to push the agenda on this. We have to be the opposition. And that's why I admire Joel's position. I admire Ruggles has always been able to come on the program. I admire Augustine, Cassandra, Kimon. I admire these people because they speak out, and we're not scared of the repercussions that may come, because you cannot just sit back and let things just go by day and not speak out about it, and it's affecting your conscience. So we are the opposition, and we have to continue. Platforms like this have to continue, forums like this, to push the agenda to the government.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Junior. And we need to look at this gentleman who has been incarcerated, possibly illegally, for almost a year, put ourselves in the situation and be our brother's keeper. That is something that we continue saying, and we know there's much more to talking, right? We cannot just speak and do nothing. Nothing will change, right? We need to look into these things and get things done. So once again, It is a pleasure to be here. God bless everybody, and let's keep on what we're doing. Thy holy name.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Ruggles Ferguson, of course, Mr. Joel Greenidge, thank you so much. Of course, Joel Greenidge, Ruggles Ferguson, Augustine Lewis, thank you so much. Cassandra Mitchell and Kimon Nimrod, thank you guys so much. We just lost Sabrina, but thanks as well for being a part of the panel. And the folks on the Zoom, let me see. I keep checking in on the Zoom, guys. If you're on the Zoom and you want to pose a question really quick, I see a lot of people on the Zoom, but no one had the camera up, so I don't know who wants to ask a question. If you want to ask the question, just enable your camera real quick. And let me see. Anybody else want to call in quickly? We have about 2 minutes before we wrap up. If not, we're just going to let the good gentleman...
Before...
Go ahead. Who is it? Go ahead.
Before we like, I was just saying something, Junior. Before you leave, we just want to we just want to use this as an opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you hearing me?
Yeah. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Yeah, we just want to use this as an opportunity. I just want to use that as an opportunity to encourage young people out there who wants to be part of 2030 Youth Grenada movement. It's a non-partisan, non-political youth organization. Myself, Michelle Kimon, Augustine Lewis, we are part of this movement. It's a movement has been growing over the recent time. It's now over 100 people, and it's actually continuing to grow. So we do encourage young people who wants to be part of this movement, who wants to be part of creating and designing our future. Feel free to reach out to any one of the members who are part of the panel. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I want to put something in your ear again for all the youth advocate. I really want to start a forum to see how we could speak firmly and strongly and add assistance to young entrepreneurs. I think it's an essential part, especially now, so that they could be dependent on their own skills. That's a whole next conversation for another panel, but I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship. And I think that if we could bring some youth on to pitch some of their project or some of the ideas, if we could garner some funding or raise some funding or provide some funding to them, I want to see how we could start that in that direction. So I don't know if you guys want to put that together, and next time we could come back and see how we could get this project going on entrepreneurship. It's very important, especially in a time like this. So that's my passion, and as soon as you guys could get back to me on something, we'll support.
Definitely, no problem.
All right, thank you, guys.
Definitely.
Guys, thank you for watching this program today. Definitely was an enlightening program, to say the least. And while throughout the discussion, we got the let me get the release that was just sent to me during the process. Posted about 10 minutes ago that the COVID-19 Control Bill 2020 will not be tabled in Parliament on Wednesday as initially proposed. They say that the government of Grenada wishes to inform its stakeholders and the general public that the bill entitled the Coronavirus COVID-19 Control Bill 2020 would not be tabled in Parliament on Wednesday, 29, 2020, as previously announced. We just posted the entire release on our page. I want you guys to go over there and check it out with all the details. Guys, I want to thank everyone for being a part of this program, the special program. Don't forget, we're on live at on weekdays from 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, I want to big up emoji.com. I want you guys to check this out. It's a brand new social media page, and it's by us, for us. It's us. It's a new way to social media. I want you guys to check it out. It's emoji.com. And when we're talking about powers in numbers, we have to build our numbers. We have to build our numbers and build our togetherness. And emoji stems to do that, right? So I want you guys to check out emoji.com. It's a brand new social media page, a new way to social media. Set up an account and see all the ways that we could bring our voices together under one initiative. That's emoji.com, www.emoji.com. Peace out, guys. Catch me tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. Oh, yes, tomorrow. Monday. I'm live. Bye, guys. Bye-bye.
Constantly thinking of food, but sometimes you just don't want to cook or want something a little different. That's when you call Tasties, preparing meals that you really love. Tasties, our mouth-watering food, would have you coming back every day. But hold on, we only prepare meals Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for now. Call early because we have a lot to serve and we would love to serve you. Tasties, we prepare the meals you love to eat. From macaroni pie to baked chicken, provision dumpling and saltfish, stewed chicken, curry chicken, baked chicken, rice and peas, salads, and more. Please call for daily menu. Call 425-0624 or 403-0411. You can pick up your meals from us or we deliver to you. Tasties, food that's delicious.
Hey, did you know that the census is due this year on April 1st? And guess what? This time we can finally count as Caribbean. This year, all you have to do is 1. Check the race box, and 2. Write in your country of birth or ancestry. You can answer by the paper form, online, or by phone. Everybody counts in Census 2020. So count as Caribbean. Yes, we count.
Life is a ride. Life is a ride. Life is a ride along. Life is a ride along. Welcome to the experience. Welcome to the journey. Welcome to the journey. A movement. This is Ridealong Live, where everyone has a story to tell.